We've seen a lot of companies restructure dramatically over the past
Mhm.
couple of years.
Mhm.
Is this a common objective and happenstance in that world?
Yeah, when it comes to corporate governance and restructuring, I think you hit it. A lot of this is happening and it's been happening since 2022. And it's mainly driven because of what the perception of this technology is. So people say this is the biggest thing since the internet, right? That's one thing I've heard like very commonly. And people now are in a little bit of a pickle where it's like, okay, our technology might not be mature enough to do this, but we also need to start doing this very quickly so we don't fall behind. So in that way, right, when you talk about corporate governance, a lot of like SWAT teams have spun up, a lot of chief AI architect or officers have come to the fold, right? Where it's a position that has never existed, but now people are talking about what is a chief AI officer and like what does that look like for an organization. And I think having that kind of center of excellence, having that kind of centralized way of thinking about AI as a company has like really driven these kind of restructuring efforts.
The machines aren't coming. They're already here. AI isn't just changing how we work, create, and think, but it's actually rewriting the rules entirely. The question isn't if AI will reshape our world. The question is, where do we as humans fit into it? Today on Human and the Machine, we're joined by someone who doesn't just study this transformation, he's building it. Reyhan Mericar is an AI architecture specialist at Accenture, an educator, and a strategist at the frontier of MLOps, LLMOps, and AI execution. He's the one Fortune 500 companies turn to when they need to move beyond the AI hype and make it work in the real world. But beyond the code and the pipelines, Reyhan is asking the bigger questions. Is AI an extension of human intelligence or the beginning of something else? Are we engineering progress or our own irrelevance? And if AI can do everything, what's left that makes us human? Let's get into it. Hi, Reyhan. Thanks for being in the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Cien, for having me. Really, really good to be here.
Rayhan, what happens when machines think faster than we do? How do we remain as the architects of our own future rather than passengers in an AI driven world?
Yeah, no, for sure. So there's definitely a lot of hype when it comes to AI, like kind of taking that place out of our lives in a way. But the way I've seen it, I don't think that is really accurate or the case. So, we started with a very transformative technology called ChatGPT, and people saw that you can like interact with it in natural language, and it's able to spit out the most beautiful responses people have ever seen from like technology. So at that point, where people are questioning, copywriting, for example, like any type of writing job, creator job is like, oh, snap, like what's going to happen? And I think when it comes to the machine and remaining human in a way, right? Something that AI is not going to be able to replace, in my opinion, is this amount of like emotional intelligence or anything that requires emotion. So, for example, if you need to go build a relationship with a patient, with a customer, with a client, I don't think AI is really up to that speed yet. I don't know if it'll get there, but certainly right now, what I'm seeing and with my expertise, I think that can't be replaced at the moment.
I just want to dig deeper into that. Can you give me a more concrete, practical example as to what that looks like in the real world of AI not being able to replicate an emotion in terms of, I don't know, negotiation in a negotiation or
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, you can have, for example, AI do correspondence, DMs, and emails with a client, right? It's not super difficult to go and emulate your style of voice with a client. But in a way, if you show up to a call with a client, you can't really have AI join on your behalf and for that to really be effective. So if you're talking to a client in real life, you're talking to a client over the phone, your authenticity has to come through to eventually make the sale, or even, for example, if you're a doctor, make the patient feel good, right? I don't think AI can do any of that right now.
that's really interesting because with all the hype about around agents and it
Yep.
being goal centered, and
Yep.
if we were to design this system whose sole purpose is to achieve that goal and have some sort of level of autonomy, pre-designed or not, to be able to achieve that goal, are you saying that it just won't be as effective as if a human were doing it?
I think for these more type of emotional tasks, yeah. But when you talk about goal-oriented agents, right? Like we can set up an agent, like an agent to go answer an email. We can go set up an agent to go update a CRM. We can go, make an agent, I don't know, to go make a voice call to someone. If I were to go instruct an agent to say, hey, go have a flirty conversation with this client or go have a very engaging conversation with this client, like that can go many different ways, So that's kind of my thought process about that.
Okay, it's interesting. I've got
Yeah.
so many questions around
Yeah,
around
yeah.
that as well. Because in some ways, AI interprets flirtation. AI would interpret. So there was a video of Jeffrey Hinton being interviewed in a TV show, like a news, and he was saying that AI thinks already, not in the way that we understand thinking to be, but in a neural network kind of way. So
Mhm.
it is able to interpret, able to have thought. So in the idea of asking like if you were to prompt AI to give you a flirtatious output. They have their own interpretation of what that looks like. But I can't say I don't have statistics or real world examples where we can actually say AI is more effective as a salesperson than as a person would do it. But yeah, it's an interesting thought what the difference is if a person were to flirt versus an AI to flirt.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No, so I think like, we've seen reasoning models come out, right? In the last few months, we've seen O1, for example, we've seen now O3. The way that the reasoning is set up with chain of thought, it's a very logical type of process, right? Whereas, for example, sales can be more spontaneous, because it's like, in my opinion, it's not so effective to go into a sales call, have a certain script, and then stick to the script the whole time, right? You want to build some level of rapport with the person you're talking to. And then you want to show a little bit of your authenticity to like in that. Whether AI gets there is still up for debate. I'm just saying right now, I'm not sure, and I could be wrong by next week. You never.
you never know. You never know. But I do agree. I think people are still buying from people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do adhere to that as well. Okay, so the next question is: we're currently at this, as we were talking about this crossroads of automation and human ingenuity. Will we adapt, evolve, and harness this power, or do you think as more people are automating and being just, I guess, a human in the loop or a part of it rather than the driver of it? Do you think there's a chance of us getting lost in the whole AI system?
So what's really interesting and what's going to probably happen in the next, even 5 to 10 years. I think Sam Altman said something about this too, right? Just the amount of agents that will probably spin up in the next couple of years, it's going to be literally unprecedented. And you can have an agent that can go as granular as just solving one task, or have an agent that can be as broad as solving a couple of different tasks, given that it's equipped with different tools. So in that vein, right, the future of knowledge work looks to now be more of like a co-pilot role, where you can go and you can say, hey, for example, send this person a calendar invite for this time. You don't have to do any of that work anymore. Hey, review this code and give me a pull request, and so I can approve it, of course. That could be something that's automated out to an agent. So when it comes to like the relevance of humans in the loop, and with building a multi-agent framework, and basically like people are going to automate themselves out of a job in a way. But with that, I'll say, I think there's a level of productivity that knowledge workers can get to. For example, if you're implementing AI agents and your current workforce is able to give you 1.5x of an output, that's a phenomenal output, in my opinion, right? If you can justify that type of cost. So I see the future being very like human plus AI augmented, rather than just like AI all the way. Yeah.
And I love that my next question was actually about working with Fortune 500 companies,
Mm.
as someone who promotes, well, correct me if I'm wrong, promotes and leads AI implementation to
Mm.
elevate, for them to be able to achieve efficiency gains. What does that, how do you position these solutions to their employees?
Yeah, it becomes a very, I don't even know the right word almost. It's like intrusive, right? Because if you are talking to some of these people on the ground, like for example, I did a project that did like copywriting with AI, right? And a lot of copywriters were like, hey, is this going to take my job? And I was like, no, like I don't think so. Not yet. No, I'm kidding. But no, no, no. It becomes a very like interesting conversation, right? Because, for example, I talk to these people in a certain way, and then I talk to the VP, director level, C-suite level people that have different opinions about, hey, we're getting pressure from the board, pressure from our upper like senior leadership to go implement AI to actually realize these efficiency gains. So I think for me, it's like striking a balance, right? How can I have that conversation with more upper level management to say, hey, this is feasible, this isn't so feasible, this is what your expectations should look like, and then like also bring that emotion to people that are on the ground to say, look, like this is still a co-pilot for you, this is not in any way intended to replace you.
But I mean, if you don't mind just being
Yeah.
transparent with me, will it eventually? replace people?
So, number one, it's going to depend on the actual task. Number two, it depends on sort of what else that person can bring to the table, right? If you're hyper specialized in this one specific thing, and if AI can do it for you and you can't get freed up to do anything else, then in my opinion, that becomes a problem, right? So I think the future belongs to multifaceted employees that can really show out their skills in multiple ways. For example, I think like, I run a newsletter, right? So AI has kind of become my consultant, a little bit of my writer, a little bit of my summarizer and synthesizer. So using AI as kind of like your own type of digital worker, that is the type of future we want to get to. And we want these knowledge workers to think at a higher level, right? We don't want them to just be doing copywriting work, for example, or just be doing like answering emails, admin work. We want them to go and drive value to the company. So in that way, I think AI frees up a lot of that, but it also brings up more opportunities to learn for that person.
And I guess from the leadership perspective, we've seen a lot of companies restructure dramatically over the past couple of years. Is this a common objective and happenstance in that world?
Yeah, when it comes to corporate governance and restructuring, I think you hit it. A lot of this is happening, and it's been happening since 2022. And it's mainly driven because of what the perception of this technology is. So people say this is the biggest thing since the internet, right? That's one thing I've heard like very commonly. And people now are in a little bit of a pickle where it's like, okay, our technology might not be mature enough to do this, but we also need to start doing this very quickly so we don't fall behind. So in that way, right, when you talk about corporate governance, a lot of like SWAT teams have spun up, a lot of chief AI architect or officers have come to the fold, right, where it's a position that has never existed, but now people are talking about what is a chief AI officer and like what does that look like for an organization. And I think having that kind of center of excellence, having that kind of centralized way of thinking about AI as a company has like really driven these kind of restructuring efforts.
But I have seen how a lot of AI solutions can really impact businesses from a profitability perspective. Even just with implementing a chatbot in 2018, increased resolution rate by this big company of 7 million customers by 20% overnight. But I am hearing more now that AI is becoming a buzzword. I feel like a lot of companies are implementing it wrong and seeing it the wrong way. Similar, basically, with what you're saying. So, ML ops and LLM ops are being the backbone of AI deployment. What is it that these companies are getting wrong in terms of development and deployment?
Yeah, so two things to your point. You mentioned that you did some work in ML and NLP, and you say 2018, right? And when you think back to some like 2018, 2019, it might have been a fight with director people or C-suite people to actually be like, hey, let's go implement this and justify what this can bring you. But now, like you said, bringing AI to the mainstream and how easy it is to kind of build with the APIs, how easy it is to spin up the enterprise level ChatGPT license. That stuff is like completely like there's no need to justify anymore, right? Because people will want this. And when it comes to MLOps and LLMOps, right? MLOps has been around, of course, for the last, I guess, decade or two. LLMOps is now the natural extension to what MLOps is. So essentially, how do we figure out the systems to keep iterating, keep deploying, and keep serving and keep evaluating different LLM-based solutions, right? That's what we want to think about. And the challenge here, in my opinion now, with some of these larger companies is that AI, like the way it came out, because of the way you can build with the APIs, a lot of this stuff happened in pockets. So it was decentralized where you had some team in this specific department or organization build this specific app. And then you jump to the next department or organization and they develop something else. So now, like from a C-suite perspective, you're looking at like hundreds of different custom solutions that have been built over the last couple of years. And the reason why MLOps and LLMOps can't work in that way is because that has to be centralized across the org. It becomes very hard because if you have one team here that built this one thing, how are they evaluating the product? How are they driving value for the product? What is their justification for building the product? That type of process, it becomes super, super hard to centralize if you have like hundreds of them in pockets in the organization. So again, to even your last point, right? This is why that kind of chief AI officer or even that like governance and restructuring is so important, just so we can know, okay, how do we intake different requests? How do we justify the spend on these requests? How do we do the build versus buy decision for some of what our people need when it comes to AI? So, and again, that's where MLOps and LLMOps has to fit in a central perspective.
But I feel like these personas need to evolve as well, especially and I feel like this persona of the LLM ops is so different from an ML ops, for example. So I come from a time where tech debt was a huge thing, and technical people that I worked with were developers that coded everything. So they didn't, not close to kind of like the business value, but was very wedded to the technology. LLMs and generative AI, I feel like the mindset is different. Like that, your head has to work differently. It's not about the technology anymore, but like speed to efficiency gains, right? And I wonder how has that been like working with these, are the LLM ops that are these Fortune 500 companies forming the right persona, or is there still a struggle with them in terms of mindset shift that I can actually just prompt the entire application?
No, it's fair. And there's like varying levels of maturity when it comes to these types of things, right? So for example, I do a lot of work in consumer goods and retail, like those types of industries, and I've seen more mature MLOps there as compared to some other industries. So from that perspective, like can you actually go and prompt something to build an application, and also like how do you justify that? I think it's a very interesting point. Just because I don't know that LLMOps is that mature yet. And people are still trying to figure out what they want to do. They know they can build off their MLOps strategies, which is fine. But again, LLMOps, like you mentioned, it becomes inherently different because of the way we train, tune, build RAG pipelines, for example. Like that's not really trivial when it comes to like MLOps. So there's definitely some level of thinking that needs to be required for, from a more central perspective in an organization to go and realize that.
I find this so interesting because I feel like with getting this team wrong, which I think is going to be the new, someone said, I think it was Jensen Huang, the new HR of companies. Probably not maybe the IT team, but I think this LLM ops team will be the future of HR teams. Do you think that, so we've seen what happened to Bloomberg when they invested in fine tuning GPT 3.5, when GPT-4 came in, just completely got obliterated. I don't know what the right adjective here is. But do you think that a lot of companies are getting this strategy wrong because they're not getting this persona right?
No, honestly, that's a good example, and it just speaks to how fast things are moving, right? So if you're coming from more central LLM ops perspective, you have your center of excellence set up, for example, and they drive that LLM ops strategy. The question becomes, how do you justify what to build, what to buy, how quickly to move, right? Number one, everyone does want to move quickly. And I think that is undoubtable because number one, the opportunity is very big. Number two, because we're seeing more and more capabilities come out every single day. But in the same vein, people don't want to get ahead of themselves when it comes to, okay, we don't want to go invest in a fine tuning of GPT 3.5 or GPT 4 when, for example, GPT 4.0 might come out tomorrow. So this is the pickle that most companies are literally struggling with right now. And my advice to them in like very quick terms is start experimenting, right? You start experimenting at a smaller scale, and then you make the decision of like, okay, if this is meeting my needs, then we can do a build or buy. Also, can this LLM, if I fine tune it, can this be adaptable to other areas, right? Can I use the same LLM if I fine tune it for a RAG pipeline? Can I use the same fine tuned LLM for an agent, for example? Then that conversation becomes more different than just like spinning up a GPT just for the sake of spinning up a GPT. I think the extensibility like will become a big factor because we move so fast.
And there's so many use cases in every organization, right? I think there's every justification to maybe perhaps fine tune a model for specific use cases, use an API for specific use cases, or just use the platform for specific use cases. Is this a hard conversation to have, or are people starting to get it?
I think as we go along, more and more people are starting to understand the different nuances between, okay, this is what like native GPT can do. This is what a fine-tuned GPT can probably get you. And then this is what like RAG and fine-tuning and like that can get you also. But honestly, now what's coming to happen is I think people are seeing the level of automation you can actually achieve, for example, with like building an agent. And now we're just trying to skip over the whole like, oh, we've seen GPT, fine-tuning, RAG. We want to see agents that actually do things for us. That's also, again, speaks to how fast the world is moving within AI. So it's not necessarily a tough conversation, but it's tough in my eyes to stay ahead with all this. Like if you're a C-suite person, how are you able to manage what is happening? Because something new happens literally every day, right? Like you need to have some sort of chief AI person that like does all of that for you.
So when I was implementing some of these solutions, it took forever. It took a big team.
Mhm.
And you've got stakeholders saying, "Is it really machine learning? Like, what is like?" You wouldn't even
Yeah.
mention NLP or like, How is this
Mhm.
artificial intelligence?" Like that. Those were the type of conversations to
Yep.
have, and you get it to take forever to convince any stakeholder to just sign it off,
Mhm.
especially if it was, like a $250,000 project that is
Yep.
just a POC, for example. Now, with AI, with a lot of noise with AI, is it different now, or kind of like executives like, no, we want agents now? Or is there still a debate happening within organizations?
The debate is mainly how fast can we move on AI. It's it's not so much do we want it anymore, but it's how fast can we move it? How can we move on it? You know what's crazy about like what has happened in the space? It's become literally top of mind in everyone, like for everyone in knowledge work. Number one, because of ChatGPT. Number two, because of how often I feel like you read about it, right? If you go to your news outlets, for example, and you read about it on the train or listen to a podcast, everything has AI sprinkled into it in some way when you talk about business. Which again, I think bringing that top of mind awareness to what AI is, people are like, huh, it gets people curious, right? I want to go try this out. Let's see how this works for our organization. Oh, this GPT thing, we could build something around it and maybe build a chatbot. That's like very very early stages. But just having it being top of mind for most people is really why people want to start doing it also. And the fact that it's top of mind for everyone means that it's also top of mind for your board, your senior leadership, your VPs. So then everyone is just like, hey, we need AI like tomorrow or yesterday.
That is so interesting because I feel like in the UK it's top of mind, but people don't know how to traverse it. Like people don't know
Mhm.
how to take the next step, and there's still apprehension in terms of budget
Yep.
allocation or implementation route. They want the best thing, and then they have this like security question looming in their head as well, like, oh, what
Yep. Yep.
about
Yep.
data? This big question around data, but no one really knows. No one what happens to the data. Is kind of like that data conversation a hindrance to companies, or are they just kind of not having that conversation?
I think it depends on the sector of where you're implementing because there's ways where you can feed in data to an API and like you can stipulate it to where it doesn't get fed back to
Mm-hmm.
OpenAI or Anthropic or
Mm-hmm.
something. But
Mm-hmm.
there's also the conversation about open source models that also brings another whole other paradigm to what's going on here. Like we've seen DeepSeek now for the last couple of weeks, what's happening there. Like Llama has actually made a lot of very, very good strides from Meta. So people are now opting to say, hey, these models are kind of catching up to the GPT 4.0 level. Let's see how we can start using these to, number one, protect our data, and then number two, not pay for API calls. But the challenge there is like you have to have the compute and the infrastructure to deploy and serve those at scale. So those are some of the conversations that we're having around data and like privacy. Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So one of your answers earlier, you talk about how far away we are from, there is, well, next week could be different, but seems like there's still time for us to compete and become, remain relevant. But do you think like with someone like Sam Altman saying that AGI is near and talking about Chat GPT-5, do you think that when he drops the general purpose bomb, or more people talking about this AGI, that your clients and the companies that you work with will also kind of jump ship? Like, will they panic or will they want it? What do you think is going to happen?
No, I think, when Sam Altman says, hey, we have AGI ready at our OpenAI AI lab, and then when Dario says from Anthropic, hey, we also have AGI, because I think people will just start saying it after. If
Yeah.
Sam Altman says it, people will just start saying it. It's up to people like me and you, Cien, to actually educate them on what's going on, right? So AGI doesn't mean that like you're going to get replaced. That's like not exactly what that means. AGI means that we now have technology or a computer that is at the level of a human that can think and reason in a way that we can. So you can't get automated, like you can't get replaced tomorrow from AGI. But what's going to happen is if we have AGI powered, like agents that are thinking and reasoning at the level of AGI or whatever that will be, people will say, okay, let's start bringing these more into our org. And what's going to happen is like, okay, if the companies that have been experimenting with AI will know that like, okay, this is the next step and we're going to start building these agents in any way we can. And it's also going to open up a lot of opportunities for other players that go build agents. So if you're building an AGI based agent, you're a startup, very, very simple for you to go and kind of pitch that to a Fortune 500 company and to get a sale, right? So I think number one, it's up to us to educate people. Number two, the opportunity becomes very big, and then people start to say, oh, this is an AGI powered agent or whatever that will be, right? These are the capabilities it can do. Let's now go and experiment with these types of agents and see how much it can get us, whether that be time savings, any level of productivity, any level of cost savings. And then we go and have the conversation from there. But I don't, like, short answer, I don't think AGI means we're going to be replaced.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think the market's also getting confused with
Yep.
these terms like automation,
Yep.
agents, general
Yep.
purpose.
Exactly.
And I think that especially if that cohort of the market are decision makers, it's easy for products to sell to the mindset rather than that
Yep. Yep.
actually is happening. So, okay, we've talked about that. Now let's talk about adoption by the employees, by the people, by the consumers. So as we're, like, let's say we figured it out, and we've achieved exponential efficiency gains. What should consumers do, and employees do to actually adopt this new world? Right.
Yeah. So when it comes to a consumer standpoint, and correct me if this is what you're getting at, but for example, right, we've had websites and, these larger companies, they have chatbots. Like, they've had chatbots for a long time. Consumers will basically see the same thing. They'll still see the chatbot interface, but it'll be done at a way cheaper and more accurate way from, like, the back end. And I guess what employees are going to see, and like, what they're going to be ready to face, I think it goes back to the point I made before too. Just like having like 100 agents under you, like, and you being the co-pilot or the orchestrator to being like, hey, go do this thing for me while I go do this other thing. Like, could you imagine a world, like, I work in consulting, right? But I don't do so much work in strategy anymore, but imagine a strategy consultant, right? A lot of them do what? Research, market research, pulling out reports, like synthesis of information. And if you can have something like a deep research for OpenAI do that for you at a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost, then that becomes a very interesting conversation even for the future of consulting. So I think, like, it's going to be a very interesting but productive future, in my opinion. So people are going to have these types of agentic capabilities. People will work with them and they'll be like, oh my God, I can do so much more in so little time, where I can go free up, like, I freed up like 4 hours of my day, and now I can just go work on more higher leverage tasks that can move the needle to whatever the goal is.
Absolutely. So I've just launched my newsletter and my podcast, and I've been planning this newsletter and podcast for years. Let me tell you, for years.
Congrats, by the way. I am a subscriber of the newsletter.
Thank you. But like, I am a testament to being able to, if you are able to augment how you work, you will find that time. But I guess some people still aren't, like, and what I'm trying to get to, just as a follow-up question to that, is what is the type of mind shift that people need to have to be able to start augmenting?
I think it starts with just the openness to learning. So I'm like in a younger generation, right? And technology has always been what I've grown up with, So looking at an iPhone to naturally go into Google, now looking at AI, it's not like a huge kind of leap for me, because I've already, like, been in the technology mindset. But there's going to be a shift of the older generation, where they're not going to know what is happening. Like, they're going to be like, what is an agent? Like, why is this thing doing all this research for me? And it's going to be a very interesting but awakening conversation, because it speaks to, number one, how fast the world will move. Number two, how much emphasis you have to put on self-learning now. That is going to be key, I think, for everyone. So for you to stay relevant and stay, like, at the top of what is now this AI age, going to be super, super important to learn new things, be curious, and be hungry, right? I think a lot of the jobs of the future and the positions in the future will go to those types of people. Not so much the person that can do the one task very well, but the person that can think in a multifaceted way, right? If you're an engineer, can you think along the lines of sales? Can you think along the lines of how does this product actually drive revenue or, save costs to the, like, overall bottom line of the business? So those are the invaluable skills that I would encourage for the future.
And you were also running a newsletter, which is really successful. You guys have gone a long way. And I do also think that not only are people adapting to, that we should be adapting to this new way of working, of augmenting ourselves with AI, but in terms of, like, creating the whole creator economy thing that is booming, and we're seeing more AI enthusiasts, experts going into this space. Yeah, can you tell me about why is it just as important to create content and grow your audience?
Yeah, so creator economy is going to be a very interesting point to look at for the next 10 years, right? I think right now the people that have started in the creator economy in the last, like, 10 years, for example, I think of, like, Alex Lieberman, Justin Welsh, like, these types of people, they already kind of have the moat, because people know what kind of content you're going to get from them, and people know what kind of, like, content they're going to put out, right? So they already have that moat of distribution. And now it's going to become even more important for content creators to build that kind of personal brand and the moat around themselves, right? So number one, like that's where authenticity comes in. I think being authentic is going to go a long way. And I know like people have been on LinkedIn, right, and Twitter, and they write a lot. But the next stage in content creation is going to be what? Video. How do you connect with the audience? How do you build time and rapport with the audience? So things like Instagram and YouTube, like those types of real content, like long form video content, I think will be the next wave in how to remain authentic outside of just writing. Because now, for example, AI can start doing a lot of the writing for you, right? Um, that's a little bit of what I think now within the content creation space. But it's going to be even more important to keep in touch with their audience too. For example, if you have like 100,000 followers on something, it's going to be impossible for you to maintain that type of scale and relationship with like on a one-on-one. So now it's like, okay, how do I start building out communities? How do I start building out different cohorts and different ways to keep in touch with people so that people know, number one, I'm a real person. Number two, I actually care about what they're doing or what they're doing. And I appreciate the fact that they follow me and support my content so much. So remaining authentic in that way is going to be super, super important as we move along. There's going to be, right, and you've already kind of seen this too, Cien, probably like a lot of just you can tell when people write with AI, right? Like there's definitely ways if people are just plugging into ChatGPT, hey, generate me a post for LinkedIn. You can tell because it has emojis, it's very verbose, it speaks in passive voice.
Yeah.
So these are types of things that even I'm starting to pick up on when it comes to content creation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these are things I'm trying to also avoid myself.
Absolutely. And that's how I edit.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, these are the telltales. I just edit it
Yeah.
out. But I create a lot of content using AI, because I churn out a lot of content. I think last
Yeah.
week was my best week. I would say I created 200 pieces of content using
Yeah.
AI, but not fully automated. Like I make sure
Right.
that I am still in the loop. Now, I would argue that all of these content that I've generated are authentically me. So do you think that authentic means not AI? Are you saying that authentic is not AI generated?
No, so for example, I think if you record a long form video of yourself, right, and you use like Opus Clip, that's
Yeah.
an AI thing, right? You can use Opus Clip to clip it up into like 100 different things.
Mm.
I think that is still valid because number one, you're the one speaking. You're the one speaking in front of the audience. You're the one that's like evoking the emotion out of these people. This is not like you have an AI version of yourself and you're not delivering any value. But also in the same fact, actually, I've seen a lot of creators go that way where they use HeyGen and Synthesia to start doing like short form content. And what that comes down to is like you can still be authentic with AI. It depends on the value and the perception that you give to your audience. Like I follow Rowan Chung. He runs the Rundown newsletter
Yeah.
and he does a lot of work with HeyGen. And even on his Instagram, it's all HeyGen. But what he stated, even like on Twitter, he said, look, guys, the amount of value that I'm able to give out, people don't even care. Number one, people might not know. And then people just don't care because the content is so valuable and it resonates with them so much. So in that way, you can still absolutely remain authentic with AI.
Yeah, I know he's a great example because he's done it so
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And I remember when he was just starting out, actually, I was like, wow, like he's done really well. With you mentioned earlier that you also worked with your clients where you focused on content creation, like using AI for content creation. Do you add this as a strategy within the whole system that you're promoting to build authenticity?
What do you mean? Sorry, I'm not sure I caught that.
So if you're, for example, saying to your client
Mm.
that we can create all of these content using AI, do you add authenticity as part of that core strategy that there
Mm.
must be a level of authenticity in whatever they generate with AI?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, right, I work with like retail brands and consumer goods brands, and the brand to what that is super important because they're consumer facing, right? So absolutely, like I would recommend, like so for example, when I did that content creation project, it was for emails and it was for like, okay, how can we generate emails? But for that, right, we needed to understand, okay, how does the brand sound? What are the actual brand guidelines? What are the brand schematics that we need? So in that, like having that as your base for authenticity is a good start. And then you check out the content and then you can edit it after the fact. Oh, but yeah, absolutely. I think in the strategy of if you're going to go create content with AI, you need to remain authentic to some level because the end goal, right, is ultimately to sell to your audience. To sell to your audience, you want to be as authentic and as relatable as possible to them.
And my last question is, in this time where we're asked to augment how we work, and it might not be coming soon, but there is AGI looming. What do you think does it mean to be human in the time of intelligent machines?
Yeah, yeah. I think I ask myself this question every single day now. But I said it before at the earlier in the podcast that remaining human is going to come down to the emotions and the way you make people feel and the amount of connection you can build with someone. If AI can go like write something for me or write my emails or go schedule a meeting for me, like that's cool, that's fine. But I need to figure out a way, and we all need to figure out a way to bring in that emotional intelligence more into our lives. That's what I'd say, right? Like building connections, building that authenticity around our brand, building the relationships with people that we love, like definitely might be a little bit harder, but now it's like the way that we have to differentiate ourselves and like actually be human.
The future is here, and you have two choices: adapt or get left behind.
Seeking out fulfillment, they think about two
prior to creating content, like
into this time to produce this much.
I think it's about EQ now. I think we're
kind to each other.
AI isn't coming. It's already here. Thinking, writing, designing, and making decisions faster than we ever imagined. Some say it's the biggest opportunity of our time. Others, the beginning of the end. So where does that leave us? Welcome to Human and the Machine, the podcast where we ask the biggest, hardest, and most uncomfortable questions about the future. What happens when AI starts making better choices than we do? Are we staying ahead or programming our own obsolescence? And if AI can do everything, what does it mean to be human? We bring on the boldest minds in AI, people, and the builders, the skeptics, the visionaries, and yes, AI itself. This isn't just another podcast. This is about our future. So if you're curious, you're building. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, hit subscribe now because the world is changing fast and the only way to stay ahead is to be in the conversation. This is Human and the Machine. Let's begin.
historically, humans have measured how successful they are based on how smart they are and how much they produce, how much money they make. In a time where potentially machines could produce more than us and be more intelligent than us, what do you think will it mean to be human?